Welcome back to the MMA Fight Round. It is your boy Chris, and I'm back with another picks and predictions video. This time for UFC Vegas 90. Brendan Allen taking on Chris Curtis in a rematch in the main event, guys. And we're back in the Apex, but Valter Walker, Johnny Walker's brother, making his debut. So we got a couple interesting fights. UFC 300 is on the horizon. I know that's what everybody's looking forward to. So we got to deal with another Apex card right before it. It is what it is. Let's break this one down. Hope you guys like the video. Subscribe. Let me know your picks in the comments, and let me know what you think of the picks. All right. Oh, if you guys want to stay tuned in on anything that has to do with the channel or fight announcements, live odds, my picks or bets, follow the Instagram guys at MMA Fight Round. Stay tuned in with anything that has to do with the channel or UFC at MMA Fight Round on Instagram, guys. Let's lead off the card with Nora Cornolle taking on Melissa Mullins. All right, Melissa Mullins all day for me here. We saw her get it done in her debut against Irina Alekseeva with her heavy grappling. She's a great grappler, and she now transitioned over to train with Uriah Faber in California. She's making all the right moves. She's undefeated. She has yet to be challenged in the grappling. You know, the striking, she's had to deal with some battles before, and that's what, honestly, you don't mind that out of when you're making a pick here, because somebody who's been through a war and who's willing to go through a war to get a W, and she's still undefeated for a reason, guys. She has, you know, her grappling has gotten her the advantage in majority of her fights, and now she's taking on a girl in Nora Cornolle who kind of got away with a robbery in her last one. If you guys watched that fight back, she took on Jocelyn Edwards, and Jocelyn Edwards took her down at will. Edwards just was not doing enough with the takedown, and fighting in Cornolle's hometown of France, it was, you know, no secret why she lost that fight. But if you watch that fight back, man, I do think that Jocelyn Edwards had enough control time. She got more than enough takedowns in that fight, and it convinced me that she won. So I thought she had won prior to the judges, you know, saying what how they felt. But it is what it is, man. Like I said, she was fighting in Nora's hometown, and she did nothing but take her down, and she didn't really use enough damage. So damage over control was what they went with there. But if you guys watched Jocelyn Edwards at the end of that fight, she looked okay too. So yeah, man, Melissa Mullins is the pick here. I think she's a lot more dangerous than Jocelyn Edwards on the ground. Her submission game is only getting better. She's been on a bunch of jiu-jitsu competitions recently. She even submitted Lauren Murphy in a jiu-jitsu competition recently, a UFC veteran. So yeah, man, I do think she's gonna get this one done, and I do think she's gonna get this one done inside the distance, man. I see her winning this one by submission. I don't think that Nora Cornolle's ground game is going to be up to par against a girl who's even better than her last opponent, who was able to take her down at will. So that's the pick, man. Next fight, we got Dylan Budka taking on Cesar Almeida. Striker versus grappler here again. It's becoming a bit of a theme here on this card. Both are making their debuts. Cesar Almeida is no stranger to fighting, though, man. This guy is a former Glory kickboxer, fought Alex Pereira 3 times, was able to win one of them, and all 3 of them went to decision. So he didn't get finished by Alex Pereira, and that for me speaks volumes. You know, he's able to go all those rounds with a guy who has that death touch, and you know, he's got great striking because of that. We saw that in his Contender Series fight. His opponent wanted to test him in the grappling from the moment the bell started. So, and he was dealing with it well. I will say that, man. I will say his time at Extreme Couture has paid off. He was able to reverse some bad positions, and when that fight played out on the feet, it was clear who was the better striker in his Contender Series fight, and that's why he earned himself a contract, man. He's very well proven. He's, you know, a seasoned veteran when it comes to the striking, and the ground game is, you know, it needs some work, but it's only getting better. And he knows that everybody's going to want to be taking him down coming into the UFC. Dylan Budka, that's his one-way route to victory here. He's going to need a takedown in this fight. He does not have the experience to meet Cesar Almeida in the striking, in my opinion, man. And, you know, he earned a contract kind of from a layup opportunity, guys. If you watch his Contender Series fight, it was what Dana White said himself, one of the most boring, one of the worst fights on Contender Series ever. So, man, like, I think Dylan is really getting a huge opportunity here, and the odds are stacked against him. He's gonna have to be ready for 15 minutes, but he took this fight on short notice. So, I mean, he's gonna have to grapple and stay top heavy, maintain top control, and I wouldn't be surprised if he uses a lay and pray style in this fight if he does get the takedown, because he needs a win to impress the boss. But man, that's not gonna be impressive at all. And I do think that Cesar Almeida is ready for that. I'm going to go with Cesar Almeida to get this one done by decision. He might lose that first round. I think Dylan is going to be tough in that first round. He's going to be top heavy in that first round. But like I said, he's taking this one on short notice, and I don't think he's going to have the cardio to deal with Cesar Almeida, who's going to be working off of his back that whole time to try to get back up and keep that fight standing. So give me Cesar Almeida to get this one done by decision, man. I don't think Dylan's ground game is going to be enough. Next fight, we got Gene Matsumoto taking on Dan Argueta. Now, Matsumoto is 24, 14-0, making his debut, and this is a guy, man, he's had a pretty tough resume. You know, he is fighting guys, you know, with decent records. He's not fighting no slouches out there with like negative records or anything like that on the regional scene. And he's been challenged before. I've seen him dropped. I've seen him lose rounds by due to grappling, you know, just losing, you know, not doing enough on bottom and getting taken down, not finding a way up, and still finding a way to win these fights, guys. He just is different. I really think this guy is different, man. And, you know, I think it's because he's been tested by these good opponents that he looked that good on Contender Series, man. He's fought 5 rounds 3 times. So, man, this guy's 15 minutes for him is light work. And we saw that on Contender Series. He was putting on a ridiculous pace against his opponent that he was just putting on a masterpiece, man. It was real, like, it was an outclass performance in that fight, man. And I really liked it. I think Gene Matsumoto is very well rounded. He can strike with you. He's got a brown belt, if not a black belt by now, in jiu-jitsu. And yeah, man, this guy is extremely well rounded coming into the UFC, taking on Dan Argueta, who, let's be honest, guys, I'm gonna have to say it. Dan Argueta is one-dimensional. All right, Dan Argueta, the most strikes he's ever landed in a fight is 47. All right, 47 significant strikes is the most he's ever landed in a fight. And it's clear he's going to grapple, lay and pray, or try to get a submission in his fights, and he needs that. He needs that in this one, because in the striking, I don't think he's going to match Matsumoto. Matsumoto's very crafty, man. And I say that with you know, with some respect to Dan Argueta, because, you know, he's had some UFC experience already, but man, he couldn't keep the fight standing against Damon Jackson. He did not look good in his most recent one against Miles Johns. Miles Johns was hitting him with some wild shots, and Gene Matsumoto's a lot more technical than Miles Johns. Honestly, man, and Miles Johns was able to deal with the grappling exchanges of Dan Argueta, which I do think Matsumoto's going to be able to as well. It's Gene Matsumoto's fight to lose here, man. I think Dan is one-dimensional. I can't pick him to win in this fight. If you guys are familiar, you know, like a long-time subscriber of this channel, you know that I don't like one-dimensional fighters. I do think in 2024, man, it's just not gonna get it done, and I can't pick Dan Argueta to get it done in this fight. I gotta go Gene Matsumoto, making his debut, to get this one done by finish or decision. I do think it might go to decision because, you know, Argueta's tough, man. He's got that UFC experience already, and Matsumoto making his debut coming off contender. You know, these guys sometimes they tend to underperform. So I see Matsumoto by decision here in that fight. Next one, we got Cynthia Calvillo taking on Piera Rodriguez. And, you know, not so interested in this fight. I'll say that, man. Calvillo is 36 and now 6-6 in the UFC. But she's yet to get a win since 2020, man. She's yet to get a win since 2020. Yet to get a submission win since 2018, guys. So long time since she's gotten a submission finish. And that's been, you know, what she used to be known for. You know, it's been rough. It's been rough to find what she's been good at nowadays, because she used to have a very good submission game and a very good top control game in her grappling. But she hasn't been working the grappling lately. She ended up in a striking battle with Lupe Godinez, and the striking is just not powerful enough. So to the judges, you know, it wasn't convincing. And Lupe looked fine in that at the end of that fight as well. You know, she wasn't really piecing her up that much. I do think that, you know, it was a very close fight, and, you know, it could have gone to either person, but I thought Lupe did win it there. And, you know, Cynthia put up a good fight against Lupe Godinez, so she's tough, man. She's definitely tough, but Lupe didn't try to take her down a lot in that fight. And Piera uses a wrestle heavy game plan in all of her fights, all right? And if she maintains top control, and Cynthia is going to have a hard time finding her way up, man. Piera, you know, she doesn't deviate from that grapple heavy game plan. We saw her against Jillian Robertson. Jillian Robertson, most submission wins in her weight class, and still Piera took her down. Still Piera tried to entertain in the grappling with a girl who we saw, you know, and it was proven that she was levels ahead of her in the grappling, you know, and she still, like I said, she doesn't deviate from her game plan. I do think she's going to try to wrestle Cynthia Calvillo in this fight, and Calvillo doesn't have the best submissions off of her back, guys. I think that Piera's going to maintain that top control, and I got to go Piera to get this one done by decision here. Like I said, I'm not so interested in this fight. You know, I do think Piera beating Cynthia Calvillo right now, it doesn't really show much because she's on a big losing streak, and Calvillo, if anything, needs this bounce back win really badly, or she might get cut. So Piera Rodriguez, I do think she is going to get this one done. I'm picking her by decision. Next fight, we got Victor Hugo taking on Alatengheili. Now, Alateng is coming off that loss against Chris Gutierrez, where, in my opinion, it was clear that he didn't belong in there, man. He only landed 38 strikes, guys. 38 strikes total. Or significant strikes, I'll say. And look, man, the most he threw in a round in that fight was 17. He's got an extremely low output, and it's because he thinks he can knock everybody he faces. And that's just not how it works, man. He thinks he can knock anyone out, and he's very plotty. He tries to hit you with those hard shots. Chris Gutierrez used his footwork, which he always does in every fight. So I don't know, you know, where the fight IQ was for Alatengheili there. So yeah, Chris Gutierrez was able to use his footwork, and he was nowhere to be hit by Alatengheili. Ended up winning that fight by decision. And Victor Hugo is not like Chris Gutierrez. He's going to come forward. He's going to try to be the hammer in this fight. And I think that's a recipe for disaster for Alatengheili, because he's going to be facing a guy who is not intimidated by his power. He already has an extremely low output. So I think if you're picking Alateng to get this one done, you're really just hoping that he can knock out Victor Hugo with a shot that I just don't think he's going to be able to land, man. Victor Hugo is going to be the guy dictating the pace in this fight. He's got some serious power himself. He's got 8 knockouts, I believe, and 9 submission wins, man. 24-4 with 17 finishes overall. In this Contender Series fight, he was super aggressive. He had every intention of getting a finish. And like I said, when he's grappling, he's well-rounded. He's well-rounded in the striking. He's well-rounded in the grappling. When he's grappling with you, he's trying to submit you. When he's striking with you, he's trying to knock you out. There's no in-between there. He's not trying to go to decision. And if this fight goes into the later rounds, I might be a little bit concerned about this pick. But I do think Victor Hugo finishes Alatengheili, and I'm picking Victor Hugo to get this one done by finish, man. Next fight, we got Norma Dumont taking on Germaine Randamie. Now, I'm going back and forth with this one, man. This is tough for me. I thought it was going to be easy to pick Norma Dumont this week. But, looking at who she's fought, to go from fighting Chelsea Chandler to now former title contender Germaine Randamie, it's a huge difference, all right? And, she went to decision with Chelsea Chandler. She went to decision with Aspen Ladd. Germaine Randamie knocked out Aspen Ladd in the first few seconds of the round, guys. Man, this is without a doubt the toughest fight for Dumont in terms of name and experience. But let's not forget, man, Germaine Randamie is almost turning 40 after this fight, man. So, she hasn't fought in 4 years. And she took some time off to become a mom. Respect to her. But now at 39, we could potentially see a less lethal version of Germaine Randamie. But her stand-up, man, let's not forget it, man. She's over 10-time Muay Thai champion before coming into the UFC. Every fighter has always tried to get her down. Her only 2 losses in the UFC are to Amanda Nunes, guys. So, man, her takedown defense has been up to par. Her ground game is now even getting better. We saw her submit Juliana Pena. So, more time in the MMA gym has paid off. Germaine Randamie is dangerous, man. And, although we haven't seen her in some time, if you're just looking at this fight on paper, it's clear who the better fighter is, in my opinion. And that's Germaine Randamie. She's the better striker. She's going to have, a lot more experience in the striking, that's for sure. And Norma Dumont, she was able to hit Chelsea Chandler with some shots, but I don't think any of those shots, they didn't knock out Chelsea Chandler. They're not going to knock out Germaine Randamie either. And Germaine Randamie has a lot more experience than Chelsea Chandler. Chelsea Chandler was there to get hit. Germaine is not. And Germaine is going to have that height and reach advantage. If you guys rewind back to Megan Anderson versus Norma Dumont, it did not go well for Dumont. Megan Anderson landed an overhand and knocked out Norma Dumont and convinced everybody that Megan Anderson might have a chance against Amanda Nunes. All right, so let's not forget that, guys. Watch the tape, man. I think being at a height and reach disadvantage here, I got to go with Germaine Randamie to get this one done, as shocking as that is to say, man. I think that the striking is, levels better than Norma Dumont. Norma Dumont is going to be desperate for takedowns. In that fight against Chelsea Chandler, it was basically given to her. Chandler was pulling guard, and now she's going to have to take down a girl who will not just give it to her. And Germaine knows, she's got to keep this fight on the feet, because if she does, man, she's just going to outpoint her. She's got that height and reach advantage, that Muay Thai experience. If she clinches Norma Dumont, I do think she can hit her with some bad knees. I got to go with Germaine Randamie to get this one done by finish or by decision. Debate me in the comments, man. Next fight, Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Christos Giagos. Good matchmaking here, man. We get to see if Bahamondes can use his distance better, because we saw against Ludovic Klein, he was not using the footwork as much, and Ludovic Klein was able to actually stop the kicking game plan of Bahamondes. Bahamondes is a kickboxer. He prior to coming into the UFC, that was what he was known for. And then he started training with Belal Muhammad when he came into the UFC, and he worked on his ground game, worked on his takedown defense, and that's how he became, the full complete fighter that he is now. But and he's got a good takedown defense. He's got good striking. He can mix it up very well, and he's even got, I think he's got a submission finish. Ignacio Bahamondes is good, man. But in that fight against Ludovic Klein, Ludovic Klein almost kind of laid out the blueprint on how to beat him, man. If you just, stay inside, don't let him kick you and force him into a boxing match, Bahamondes was not looking that good. And then he got taken down at will against Ludovic Klein, who was the smaller opponent. But Ludovic Klein is strong. Ludovic Klein is extremely strong. And just because he laid out the blueprint doesn't mean that I think Christos Giagos can execute, man. I do think, Christos has some cardio issues. He's got some heavy hands in that first round, and he's a hard fighter to deal with in that first round. We saw him catch Daniel Zellhuber when he was at a height and reach disadvantage in that fight. And Daniel Zellhuber was able to weather the storm, take the fight into the second round, and that's where, you know, like I said, the fatigue starts to kick in and the mistakes start to come in. And yeah, man, Christos, very readable takedown he shot in that fight against Daniel Zellhuber, that Zellhuber was able to take advantage and put him in an anaconda choke. And Bahamondes training with a guy like Belal Muhammad, that has to have you know, paid off, and it's gonna have to show in this fight, because Christos is going to need a takedown. I do believe that. And Bahamondes keeps this fight on the feet. I do see him piecing up Christos, and Christos eventually getting finished in the later rounds due, you know, to him getting tired and just making those mistakes, readable mistakes that anyone with good fight IQ, especially like Bahamondes, he should be able to take advantage of. And Bahamondes, you know, he can also take a punch. He can also take a punch, man. So, you know, the heavy hands that Christos has in that first round, I'm not so worried about him, man. I do think that if Bahamondes maintains that range, maybe even shoots some takedowns himself, I do think that he can surprise Christos and win this fight very easily, man. I'm gonna go Ignacio Bahamondes to get this one done by decision, man. I think that, you know, that first round is gonna, that's why I gotta pick him by decision. That first round is gonna be a little sketchy for me, but you know, by finish it could definitely happen, but I'm picking Bahamondes by decision. Next fight, we got Alex Morono taking on Court Mcgee, man. Veterans, two veterans of the sport. Court has that grit mentality. He mostly loses by decision, but, you know, 0 knockouts after 21 fights in the UFC. It's clear that we can now admit that he's not knocking out Alex Morono on April 6th, guys. I don't think that's what's happening. And Court, now he's 39, coming off 2 knockout losses. So like I said earlier, you know, he mostly went to decision, but now he's coming off 2 knockout losses. One against Matt Brown, 40-plus-year-old Matt Brown. And, you know, Matt Brown, credit to him, he's got power, but that does not look good, man. When you're losing by knockout, you're getting folded against Matt Brown at this time. So, you know, Court Mcgee, like I said, 0 knockouts after 21 fights in the UFC, 3 knockouts overall in his entire record. So, you know, he's got a good ground game. All right, his striking hasn't really, you know, been up to par overall, and, you know, it's gotten him by, that's for sure. It's gotten him by, but there's a lot to be desired in terms of power there. And Alex Morono, we saw, you know, against Tim Means, he was able to deal with, you know, that first round. He was actually in some bad situations in striking. You know, Tim Means was kind of having some success in the striking, but, you know, I think it was overall just because Morono had to just wake up, pick up the pace, and realize he's got to get forward and start being the guy dictating the fight instead of letting Tim Means dictate the fight. And that's when everything started switching for him. So, man, we've seen him get it done in there with guys like Tim Means in there, old and experienced Tim Means. I do think that Morono, he's only 33 years old, but he's a veteran, man. A lot of fights, and he went to decision with Buckley. Guys, they would never book Joaquin Buckley versus Court Mcgee. That would just not even be fair, all right? So there's a reason why, you know, Morono can still take on guys like Buckley, and I do think that he can beat Court Mcgee. I'm going to go with Morono to get this one done by decision. He's got a great ground game, just like Court Mcgee does. He's even got some submission wins. He's even got a knockout in the UFC. So, you know, Alex Morono's striking is decent. It's definitely better than Court Mcgee's in my opinion, and I do think he's going to get it done by decision. Next fight, we got Trevor Peek taking on Charlie Campbell. Trevor Peek fights are always fun to watch, guys. This guy is a barn burner type of fighter, and he will make every fight a tough fight. He's got heavy hands and a no quit mentality. No quit mentality, that is for sure. This guy, you've seen him extremely fatigued, extremely tired, but he will still fight and defend a takedown. He'll still try to, he'll do whatever he can possibly can to not lose by finish. And even when he knows he's down and out, he will go until the end of that bell, man. So anyone fighting Trevor Peek has to be ready for 15 minutes, and anyone fighting Trevor Peek has to be ready for that first round where he's going to be his most lethal, man. I think his heavy hand approach and that barn burner approach, you know, it has led to him getting tired into those later rounds, and it's even put him in some bad positions in terms of getting easily taken down, man. Chepe, you know, he's a true featherweight, and he took that fight on short notice, 10 days notice. He was taking down Trevor Peek whenever he wanted to, up until, you know, the later rounds where I think the fatigue started to set in. But man, at 10 days notice, I think if Chepe had a full camp for that fight, he probably would have continued to take him down, because we saw also in Trevor Peek's first fight, he also got taken down as well, man. So like the takedown defense, it's not up to par. But Charlie Campbell, no submission wins, no submission losses, and a lot of knockout wins. So I think this fight will play out on the feet for the most part. So that, you know, playing into Trevor Peek's realm, it could put Charlie Campbell in some danger here, but he has been working on his grappling. He's been, you know, he trains with Longo Weidman, Matt Serra, and those guys in Long Island. And he actually has been performing in some grappling competitions. He performed in a grappling competition before this fight was announced, and he won. So his ground game is getting better, and I don't think we've seen the full skill set out of Charlie Campbell yet. You know, he's young. He's only 28 years old, and in his last fight, he looked extremely good. In his Contender Series fight against Chris Duncan, you know, he did lose, but he damn near had him out of there, man. His striking is high level. I do like the striking of Charlie Campbell. He utilizes his height and reach very well, and he's no stranger to fighting in the pocket or fighting in danger either. So I think, you know, if he understands what he's getting himself into fighting Trevor Peek, I think he knows that he's gonna have to you know, be ready for a first round war. All right, be ready for a war, because Trevor Peek is just that. But I do think that Charlie Campbell is going to catch Trevor Peek with something, and maybe even knock Trevor Peek out, give him his first knockout in the UFC. Chepe, he landed some crazy shots on Trevor Peek, and Chepe, you know, like I said, he's a featherweight. So if a true lightweight like Charlie Campbell, who I think he's taller, he will have the reach advantage. He's got all those knockouts prior to coming into the UFC, and a knockout finish in his debut. I do think he's gonna have the heavier hands than Chepe, and I think if he lands those shots, he's gonna put out Trevor Peek, man. So give me Charlie Campbell to get this one done by finish in this fight, man. I think Trevor Peek, you know, although he's a barn burner, although he's fun to watch, he's gonna need to apply a little bit more IQ to get it done against guys like Charlie Campbell. And you know, he could be live. He could knock out Charlie Campbell, that's for sure, but it would have to be with something that Charlie Campbell just doesn't see, and it would have to look very similar to Charlie Campbell's Contender Series fight, and I do think he's grown from that. So I'm gonna go Charlie Campbell by finish here. Next fight, we got Valter Walker taking on Łukasz Brzeski, Johnny Walker's brother, making his debut, man. And you would think that he would be a wild knockout striker, right? Being that he's Johnny Walker's brother. But no, this guy actually prefers to wrestle. And we've seen how successful you can be at heavyweight when you are really good at wrestling. This guy is 11-0, undefeated, really yet to be tested in that wrestling, man. This guy is very good in the takedowns, at getting takedowns, and he's got a dominant ground and pound. He's got a couple ground and pound finishes. I think, yeah, 7 finishes. Most of them were by ground and pound. Some were even just by retirement. These people are quitting in there, guys. And he's even got a rear naked choke submission. This couldn't be any more of a layup opportunity for Valter Walker. And I say that because Łukasz has a 47% takedown defense, guys, coming into this fight. He's 0-3 in the UFC. he has yet to really prove he's UFC caliber, guys. And Valter Walker, man, Johnny Walker's brother, the UFC's kind of, and like I said, they're giving him a layup here. They kind of want him to get Lucas out of here. I think this is Lucas's last chance to get a win for the in the UFC for his contract, and I think he's fighting for his career here. So he might. We've seen these fighters who are fighting for their contracts look extremely impressive in their last fight. They look like nothing we've ever seen before. So could we see that in this fight? I don't think so. Simply because, like I said, at heavyweight, when you are a really dominant wrestler, it is just not fair. These guys, they don't train the grappling enough, and Valter Walker does just that. And he's very anyone concerned about his cardio, he's been in 5-round fights before. He didn't go the full 5, but he went to the 4th round, and he doesn't look cardio wise, he doesn't look too gassed out. So I'm gonna pick Valter Walker here. I think he's got the cardio, and I do think he can wrestle and ground and pound finish. I don't even think he's gonna need the full 15 to ground and pound finish Łukasz Brzeski on April 6th, man. I see Valter Walker winning in his debut. Next fight, we got Morgan Charriere taking on Chepe Mariscal. Big fan. I'm a big fan of Chepe, man. I really like his fighting style. He's undefeated in the UFC, and his only losses, prior to coming into the UFC, if you look at the names, man, talking about Pat Sabatini, Joanderson Brito, Steve Garcia, these are all names that we know now are in the UFC. So we can say that he was fighting UFC caliber opponents back in the regional scene, and now still fighting in the UFC now. It's no secret why he's made his way into the UFC. It's because he's improved from those fights, man. He's only gotten better, and we've seen that in his fights. This guy, he has never let his opponent dictate the pace, and he's always, he's kind of just been more of the matador in his fights as well. He's dictating the pace. He's very good at mixing up takedowns. He's well-rounded, man, and I really like his style. He's very aggressive. He looks to get a finish in there, and if you're not ready for 15 minutes, he can put you away. Morgan is also another guy. Watching the tape, I've yet to see anyone really dictate the pace on him that much, but when you are, you like in some 5-round fights that he's been booked, that I've seen that. So when you are dictating the pace on him, he doesn't look that good, man. Morgan Charriere, only one fight in the UFC, and in that fight, I don't think he was tested enough, man. I think he outclassed his opponent, and we didn't really get to see him, in any bad situations. He didn't really, he just dominated. He really dominated. And to go from that opponent to Chepe Mariscal, who, like I just said, man, he's fought guys like Brito, Pat Sabatini, Steve Garcia in the regional scene, and now fighting in the UFC. Trevor Peak, man, he's gonna be ready for a war. Chepe is ready for a war. We've seen him take fights on short notice before and still be ready for the full 15. So I'm not questioning Chepe's cardio. I'm actually questioning Morgan's cardio. I don't know which of the two is going to dictate the pace in this fight. It's really, I think that's going to be who wins it, because man, these two are going to come at each other, and it's going to be fun to watch. But I don't know whose chin is going to hold up. I do think that we're going to see a finish in this fight, and I'm a big fan of Chepe. I'm picking Chepe to get this one done by decision. I do think that, by finish. I do think that Chepe, like I have just said, his experience is going to pay off in this fight. He's fought the tougher competition, and Cage Warriors, I know that's where the promotion that Morgan is coming from, I don't rate it too highly. So I do think, like I said, the level of competition he's faced is not truly testing Morgan, and to go from that to Chepe, it's just a big jump. It's a big jump, and might have been too soon in my opinion. So I'm gonna go Chepe Mariscal to get this one done by finish in that fight. Next one, we got Alex Hernandez taking on Damon Jackson in the co-main event. Yeah, not an interesting fight here, man, but it is what it is. And I'm not confident in either one of these two. And how can you be? With the way they've been performing, Alex Hernandez, he has good losses though. He's had really he's fought really tough opponents, and he's had some impressive wins. He's got a finish over Benil way back. All right, that's now way back, we can say. And he's been in the UFC since a very young age. He's pretty much grown up in the UFC. 12 fights for the promotion, and he's only 31 years old now. So I do think he's overlooked sometimes because of all the time he spent in the UFC. But, the people he's losing to are no slouches, all right? And he's only been submitted by Renato Moicano. And that's Damon Jackson's strength here. Alex Hernandez, he's well-rounded. He can grapple. He can strike with you. Damon Jackson is not no knockout finisher. All right. Damon Jackson is going to look to get a submission here. 22 wins in his career. 15 of them are by submission. It's very clear that he's going to try to get this fight to the ground. And I do think he has the grappling advantage. All right. But Alex Hernandez is a dog in there. And if he has the cardio, if he can deal with some grappling exchanges, I think he will be the better striker in this fight. And that alone, I got to go with Alex Hernandez to get this one done by decision. I think that Alex Hernandez, these two, we've seen them enough. We know exactly what they bring to the table. But Alex Hernandez of the two has, a lot more room to grow. And he's only 31. Like I said, I think he's a little bit overlooked. I think he can get it done against Damon Jackson. If you look at his losses, tough losses to tough opponents, all ranked. And Damon Jackson hasn't really, this is gonna be a tough test for him. This is a tough opponent for him in terms of his resume. And I gotta go Alex Hernandez by decision. I don't think Damon Jackson is going to be able to get a submission here. If he does win this fight any other way of submission, I think it's just gonna be top control snooze fest. So either way, it won't look good. Yeah. Next fight, main event, we got Brendan Allen taking on Chris Curtis. Allen has looked like a 2.0 version of himself, man. 6-fight win streak, 5 by submission finish out of the 6. And yeah, man, he's used his range better. He's getting these takedowns better. His grappling is looking world class now. And there's no doubt that this one will play out a lot different from the first time these two fought. Chris Curtis, I would say he's been looking more of the same, and he's 36. He came into the UFC relatively late though, so it's really no big surprise to me why we haven't really seen much of, I would say, like, we haven't seen him really elevate his game, because he's 36 now. I think he's peaked in terms of what we're going to see out of Chris Curtis going forward. And I say that, but it's been working for him. He's 5-2 in the UFC, and he's yet to be finished out there. Hermansson, he kind of laid out the blueprint on how to beat Chris Curtis, and Hermansson stayed on the outside. He was forcing Chris Curtis to basically try to chase him and not be sitting on his shots and not be able to just box with guys, and that frustrated Chris Curtis a lot, man. He was complaining a lot in that fight, doing too much yapping and not enough fighting, and I didn't like that, man. I think Chris Curtis, if he's only going to be a counter fighter, or if he's only looking to box, man, it's not gonna work out. Brendan Allen is a lot more well-rounded. He has way more ways to win this fight, and if he doesn't entertain the in the pocket fighting with Chris Curtis, I think he's gonna piece up Chris Curtis in this fight. His striking has gotten a lot better, and he's a lot more composed, man. I think you give him 5 rounds, I think we might see Brendan Allen give Chris Curtis his first finish, man. Brendan Allen has been looking really dangerous lately. I'm all in the hype, and I believe it, man. I do think that Brendan Allen can win this fight and avenge his loss against Chris Curtis. He got knocked out in that first one, but I do think it was because he entertained that fighting in the pocket, man, and that IQ was not there. He's only gotten better. And we've seen it, man. We've seen it in this win streak. I gotta go Brendan Allen here to get this one done. More ways to win, and he already knows how he can lose. So yeah, Brendan Allen is the pick for me. And there you guys have it, man. Those are the picks for UFC Vegas 90. Hope you guys like it. Like and comment. Let me know what you think. Subscribe to the page. And yeah, I'm out of here, guys. Peace.